They'll keep coming. Tell them to come. All move forward, please. Come. Move forward. Good. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome to another interesting event on a weekend. I know Saturday is a very, very busy day for you, but I'm quite sure you're watching wherever you are there. And it's my proud privilege to welcome all the viewers watching the program online. And if you have, as usual, if you have any questions, please send your question to the number which is flashed on the screen. We'll be placed it before the panelists. They'll be happy to respond to all your questions, actually. And before coming to today's event, let me quickly tell you what's happening in the month of October so that you don't miss it by any chance. First, on the 4th of October, our All India Management Student Convention. It's happening on 4th October. Innovate for a Responsible Tomorrow. It's full house. It's happening on 4th. It's again live webcast. You can watch it live from wherever you are. And on Friday, 6th October, we have Inside the Boardroom, How Behavior Triumph Rationality. Again, we have an outstanding panel. Mr. Gopalakrishnan is a former executive director of Tata Sons, and Mr. Vijay Shankar, chairman of Sanma Group, will be in conversation with him. On Monday, 9th October, we have a discussion on the professional's handbook that ChatGPT needs. All about ChatGPT you want to know, please come and attend this. Again, we have our Honorable Minister in Tamil Nadu for IT, Palnivel Tyagarajan. He is going to be the thing. He'll be in conversation with a panel of outstanding speakers. Please do mark your diary on the 9th. Then 12th October, we have talk on Dr. Thiruvalluvar on health management. You know, Tirukkural is one of the very, very popular thing, and Muruganandam is really picked up from all the couplets, and he'll be in conversation with Mr. Rajaram IAS. Now, these are some of the programs. There are lots of programs there, and I have not gone through some important programs. I briefed you. Just log onto my website. You will know all the programs which are listed at different places. Coming to today's event, Busted, Debunking Management Myths with Logic, Experience, and Curiosity. We have, again, an outstanding panel, outstanding authors. At least I'll walk miles to listen to them. You are going to have a wonderful time this evening listening to these four gentlemen. Let me have the privilege of welcoming the district panel, Mr. Ashok Soota, author, executive chairman, Happiest Mind Technology, who joined us online from New Delhi. Very warm round of applause to Mr. Ashok Soota. He is not new to MMA. He has already come and as a chief guest for our AGM, and we still remember your thought-provoking address which you delivered during our AGM, sir. Then we also have a very, very highly distinguished panelists and also the co-author, Sandhya, co-author, founder, managing director of Raintree Media. Then we also have a Peter de Jager, author, speaker, writer, and consultant. We have our own Ravichandran Purushothaman, president, India region, Danfoss, and also past president of MMA. Meera Nair, management consultant, independent director, DBS Bank Ltd, and also member of the MMA Managing Committee. May I request distinguished panelists, please take your place on the dais. Sandhya, Meera, Ravi, and also Peter, please. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause to our distinguished panel for this evening. May also all the people who are coming now can use that. You can sit on the table here. Come, sir. Our general manager of BSNL, come to the reserved seat is only reserved for you. Please come. Come forward. Mr. Viswanathan, you can also step forward. Bring your colleague. Avis, why don't you take the round table now? Come in the front. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the format of this event is, as I said, all the questions if you have, please park it on. Let me, as a proud privilege, welcome all the viewers watching this program online, all the people who joined us in person. Let me also have the privilege of welcoming a president MMA, Mr. Mali, who's here. Maybe a warm round of applause to Mali for joining us this evening. Mali, thank you. And the format is, I'm going to request the author, Mr. Ashok Soota, to share his thing from New Delhi. He'll be joining, addressing us online. Thereafter, I'll hand it over to Sandhya and she will lead the conversation. Before that, what we'll do, we'll have a photo session with the book. We'll launch the book officially. And can I have the books, please? That's here. It's here. Mali, may I also request to join on stage when the launch of the book? May you step forward? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now it's my proud privilege to introduce Mr. Ashok Soota. Actually, he doesn't need introduction. You all know them so well. He's the executive chairman of Happiest Technologies Limited and is widely recognized as one of the pioneering leaders of the Indian IT industry. As a serial entrepreneur, he had both companies where he was founding chairman. Excuse me. Thank you. Founding chairman of very, very successful IPOs and Happiest Mind 2020 and Mindtree 2027. Ashok Soota had to hold a bachelor degree in electrical engineering from University of Roorkee and also an MBA from Asian Institute of Management, Philippines. Ashok is also co-author of the national bestseller Entrepreneurship Simplified from Idea to IPO. And his hobbies include trekking, outdoor yogas, and much more. And may I request Mr. Soota to please address the audience. Over to you, Mr. Soota.
Thank you very much. It really is a pleasure to be with the MMA again. I must say that you're one of the most proactive management associations in the country, which is why I'm so happy to be back with you. I'd like to again convey our thanks to the office bearers of the MMA for organizing this event, also to all of the members who come and joined physically and virtually, and of course my colleagues here who have been co-authors on the book. You know, the first unusual thing I'd say about this book, Busted, is that there are 3 co-authors. And someone might say that's almost either 2 too many or even 1 too many. And there's a very good reason why this happened. The origin of this book really is that there were multiple things which, examples of which have been given in your own communication, culture eat strategy for breakfast, fail fast, fail cheap, and so on. These are like truisms and aphorisms, which cause me a lot of irritation and annoyance. I really believe that these, if taken at face value, could lead into erroneous management decision-making. And to that extent, I've been thinking for a while that I may need to write a book on that. And then at another event in India, where both Peter and I were speaking, we happened to meet. He was also selling his books at the stalls provided by the organizers after he had spoken. And likewise, I was finishing my cycle. We exchanged the books. And then when I read his book, I found that it was structured in a very nice way. He gave a point of view, then he gave the other hand, on the other hand. And I said, this is exactly what my book is about. Because you cannot say, hey, look, I'm contradicting Peter Drucker or Michael Porter or a practitioner like Jack Welch, and my view is the gospel truth. There have to be other points of view. So then a little later, I met Peter in Toronto, and I asked him, would you like to participate in writing such a book? I'd already more or less decided on my essays, if you will, and told him that he could go ahead and submit his own ones. And which he did very promptly. I must say he was very prompt in everything he did. And then what happened was came the pandemic. And really every publisher said, look, this isn't the time to start or publish a book like this because nobody's traveling, nobody's reading. The only thing on their minds is survival and the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, I did the Happiest Minds IPO. A little later, I started SCAN, my not-for-profit medical research trust. A year later, I also started Happiest Health. Now, lo and behold, that left me no time to complete the book. I had an obligation to Peter that having embarked on this, we should certainly complete it. And that is when I thought of Sandhya, who I've also known for a long time. And Sandhya then came and completely helped us to complete the book in the right way. So because it's not just my view and then Peter's view, she went and sought out very enlightened people who then gave their own views. And then that helped to round off the book. So it was a very wonderful way of getting together to write a book. I think we wrote it with, I would call it the minimal amount of friction amongst ourselves, very efficiently, which is how it should be. And lo and behold, you have this. And since you're a management association, let me just take one of the essays. And this is the one, it always causes me irritation. This is that we are overled and undermanaged. The flip side to which was then provided by Peter when I had actually framed the myth. And he said the other one is that we are overmanaged and underled, or the other way around. So then, or overlaid and undermanaged. So we have both sides of the coin here. And, how do myths like this come around? Let me tell you that it is really these so-called management gurus and writers who keep writing on topics like this, who created this whole thing of saying we're underled and overmanaged. And that is saying we're not, creating a vision, we're not showing people the way to the path ahead, etc. And how could then those same people also say side by side we're overmanaged? Because so many organizations go down the drain because they've not attended to good management. As I said, Peter provided the flip side, which again had become like a current. A lot of people protested against that truism and therefore also wrote reams and reams of paper on the opposite side. To me, I think there's a very simple thing. Both leadership and management are two sides of a coin. You can't do without the other. You have to be able to be a good leader and a good manager to lead an organization, to be the head of an organization, and at every level. You have to have components of both leadership and management. You've got to show people a vision. You've got to have an alignment behind the vision. And yet you have to be very clear about your processes. You need to be clear on the rhythms of your business and see how you manage them well. I would add only one more thing. You not only need to be a good leader, a good manager, but you also have to strive to be at all times a good human being. So with this, let me turn this over. I think Sandhya takes charge from here onwards.
Thank you, Mr. Soota. It's very inspiring. I'm quite sure you're going to be staying with us for the conversation with Sandhya, and we are eagerly looking forward to that. Before I request Sandhya to lead the conversation with the distinguished panel this evening, let me briefly introduce the distinguished panelists this evening. To start with Peter. Peter is the best known for his global effort to raise responsible awareness of Y2K issues throughout the 1990s. His current goal is to tear down existing myths surrounding the change process, which create unnecessary difficulties when implementing the change. His specialties are a communication expert in both written and spoken word. Very warm welcome, Peter. We are eagerly looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the book which you have authored. Let me have the privilege of introducing Sandhya, the co-author of the book. She is a founder, managing director of Raintree Media, and she is also an author of Cultural Evangelist. She was a career journalist for over 16 years, owning her craft in reputed news magazines, TV production houses. She actually promotes art, uniquely curated events like the Raintree India, first multi-art festival curated and performed entirely by women. Our stories have been published in the internationally best-selling inspirational stories, Chicken Soup for the Soul, and the detailed profile is already there in the invitation. You can click and see because it's a very, very impressive profile, which everyone would be envy to really emulate. Very warm welcome, Sandhya. Pleasure to have you with us this evening. Let me have the privilege of introducing Ravichandran Purushothaman, more known to me as my president of MMA, and he's the president of India region, Danfoss Industries Limited. Ravi is the Danfoss subsidiary of a leading family-owned Danish MNC, Danfoss, Denmark in 2023. Ravi is also a member of the global management team, board member, global mentor since 2013. He has been an active energy and water, food and agri technology space, supporting and mentoring several early stage startups in India and various roles. And he is also very active in CII, chairman of CII Chennai chapter and CII Tamil Nadu in 1718. And as I mentioned, Ravi is the past president of Madras Management Association in 2021. He's one of the finest presidents I worked with. It was a pleasure to work with him. Ravi, thank you for joining us this evening. Pleasure to listen to you. It's my privilege now to introduce another very, very distinguished panelist for this evening. Meera Nair is a management consultant, independent director, DBS Bank India Ltd, and is a business leader with over 25 years of diverse corporate and entrepreneurial experience. She has worked with and advised governments and corporates. Meera is an independent director, as I mentioned to you earlier, with DBS Bank. And Meera has also worked with a number of companies, including ICICI, EAD, Parry, and also executive coach for CXOs and entrepreneurs. Meera holds a master's degree in agricultural economics with specialized in agribusiness and much more. And she's also got a management degree from Mumbai University and degree in agriculture science from Kerala Agriculture University with a diverse qualification and diverse input. And she's a very good CXO coach. And she's also a member of the MMA Managing Committee. Very warm welcome to Meera. It's a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Over to Sandhya for leading the conversation. As I mentioned to you, all the viewers watching this program online, please share your questions to the numbers flashed on the screen. We'll compile them and place it before the panelists. Here, the people who are here, there's a slip going around. You can write your questions so that we would like to accommodate as many questions as possible next 1 hour, 10 minutes. I'm quite sure if I hand over the microphone to you, I'm quite sure you will, it'll take some time to frame your question. That's the idea. We wanted you to write the question and give it to you. Over to you, Sandhya.
Hello. Thank you all very much for coming to the Chennai launch of Busted, Debunking Management Myths. And our heartfelt thanks on behalf of Mr. Soota, Peter, and myself to Group Captain Vijay Kumar, Executive Director of MMA, for hosting the session this evening. It's the third launch of this book. We had one in Delhi and another one in Bangalore. And I think we have saved the best for the last because as usual, we've got a very warm welcome in Singara, Chennai. And we are very grateful to Ravichandran Purushothaman, President India, Danfoss Industries, and to Meera Nair, Management Consultant and Independent Director, for joining us today. I'm sure their varied experience will be a rich addition to the discussion. And I can see that a lot of the audience are students, and I think they will take a lot away with them from whatever the panelists are going to share. So do take notes if you want to, and they're going to be very happy to answer all your questions. So on my part, I'm very thrilled to be the co-author of Busted. My association with Mr. Ashok Soota spans over 25 years. And I used to interview him when I was a journalist. And later when I became an author and a publisher, he's written the foreword and he's been at the launch of my books and several occasions where he's given the keynote addresses. So during COVID, I also became a podcaster like many others. And then at one point, I reached out to him to be my guest on the show, and he refused. He said he was too busy doing many things and he will not. I was a little disappointed, but then he offered an invitation which seemed too exciting for me to say no, which is to join him and Peter in writing this book. Having thought, okay, I should say yes to it. I was actually a little hesitant because I'm not a subject matter expert myself. But Mr. Soota had a lot of faith. And like he said, I've been an entrepreneur. I have set up my own companies and I have been a journalist. So all I have to use is my judgment and my professional expertise in doing the job. And that's what I did. And Peter didn't know me at all. We first met on Zoom, but it's been a delight to work with him. And I've had a lot of fun doing this book. I also had the privilege of tapping into the knowledge of a wealth of brilliant minds. Mr. T.T. Jagannathan from Chennai's own TTK, Nandan Nilekani, Sandeep Maini, Hema Ravichandran, Professor Rishikesha Krishnan, Revati Ashok, and Manish Sabarwal. So the result is this book. And, I feel it's like a personal guide to anybody at any level of their career. It contains so much of wisdom and experience and logic. And it also tells you not to accept everything, even what the authors have to say. You don't have to accept it, but think. Open up your mind and think. That's what this whole book is about. There are 17 essays in the book, and we've deliberately kept a very light tone. My audience, actually, I know Peter differs from me. He thinks it is for senior level people. And my audience was my colleagues at work and the younger ones. I would look at people like this and say, there are so many books that are coming out on management. Who will read this book? How should it be written? What should the style be? They should not read the first sentence and say, oh no, this is another textbook. It is not a textbook. We are not academics. But we bring, when I say we, I mean my two eminent co-authors, lead authors, I should say. They bring in all the wisdom and experience of practical experience. So that carries a lot of weight. And at whatever stage of your career, whether you're a student or whether you're a young professional or you're mid-level or you're a CEO, there is something that you can take away. It is going to be a playbook for you if you know how to absorb the information, which is to do with an open mind. And now let me get on to the discussion part of the program. I think Mr. Soota has already told us how he and Peter got started on the book. But I want to ask him about, a particular myth that we had a lot of discussions over. And it's something that concerns all industries. Actually, the entire book is, industry agnostic. It could apply to anybody. So this myth, Mr. Soota, which struck me as rather odd, fail fast, fail cheap. So why don't we discuss your opinions on that?
Sandhya, this is a myth which originated in Silicon Valley. There, money is actually easy to come by. But there's also an approach of saying, hey, if we start something, let's not blow up too much money. Let's, if required, need to move away from it without blowing up a lot. Therefore, we'll take this thing of failing fast and falling cheap. And, to me, that's absurd. I don't think you should ever start a company thinking that is going to fail. You have to start a company with the intent that it will become profitable and you will ultimately be able to give an exit to your stakeholders. Now, in order to do that, there's only one prerequisite, which I believe, apart from the fact that you must have a strategy which keeps evolving, but you need to be clear how much cash you're going to need till you break even, and then know that you've got to either have the ability to already bring it in or raise this as you go along. There may be need for a change in strategy. You may have to zoom in or zoom out or completely re-strategize. And one very good example is around the dot-com boom. In India alone, I believe 100 companies came in at the time of the dot-com boom, and Mindtree was one of them. And yet when the dot-com bust came, I would say 98 or 99 went and busted. And Mindtree alone went on, we re-strategized, and we went on to finally do a record-breaking IPO. But the key to all this is that we had enough cash. When I first went to my VCs, they said, hey, why do you need so much money for a services company? I said, no, we do need that money. We do need to plan to create a large company. And we're going to build the organization to create a large company as we start, which means we will burn up cash. Now, therefore, we had a plan for success. I don't think we would have ever thought of failing fast and failing cheap. In fact, coincidentally, I just met a person earlier this evening. I was interviewing for a new role in our company. And when I'm saying company, this one is Happiest Health. And lo and behold, this guy's done two ventures, which are both bust, or the other one is in the process of busting. And when I asked him this, he said, yeah, I told myself I'll give myself 2 years, or I told my family I'll give myself 2 years to try this. And if it works, it's fine. If it doesn't, then I'll go back to the corporate world. No, I think that's the worst way to start a company.
Okay. Peter, one of the myths that we have discussed and at various points, we've had differing opinions is about, PowerPoint type presentations, because most people think it's the most boring thing, but you say you use it. So why don't you explain?
There's a phrase about PowerPoint that is a death by 1,000 cuts, right? Death by PowerPoint. And it's said with good reason, because most of the PowerPoint presentations you see take the same form. There'll be a white background, and then there'll be several lines of text. And then the presenter will start presenting in a monotone for 4 hours, and they will bore you to tears, and all you want to do is run away from the room. But that's just a bad use of a wonderful tool. We communicate with images from 50,000 years ago. Cave art is nothing more than a presentation. It's not digital, but it's a presentation using visuals. And that's what this tool, PowerPoint, can do. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. If you create a PowerPoint to use images to communicate your ideas, then you can say a tremendous amount in a very short period of time. And you can focus your attention on communicating the content rather than reading off the screen. I consider PowerPoint to be the best way to communicate complicated ideas. I agree with Ashok, and it took me a while to understand why we disagreed on a particular area. Ashok says it shouldn't be used in a corporate meeting. He's right, because it's a different type of communication. But if I'm teaching a subject in a workshop or a long keynote, and it's a new idea, then I need to use visuals to capture your attention. And once I capture your attention, I can put anything I wish in front of you.
Mr. Soota, we've also discussed this topic of loneliness. It's on everybody's mind. We've all been through so much of angst during the pandemic. And in the corporate setting, it can actually make or break a leader. So why don't you tell us a little bit more? Because I know we discussed it at length while we were writing this chapter.
Sure. Sandhya, I think I must frame your context. It's not about loneliness. The myth that we are demolishing is it's lonely at the top. And the way I see it, I've now been a CEO of a company for more than 40 years. So I do feel I'm really well qualified to comment on this. And I must say that in all of these years, I can't say I've ever felt lonely. So that's one starting point. I'd put this into two groups. One is, I think the fact that the so-called loneliness is because the buck stops at the CEO. And therefore you feel you're isolated, you have to take the flak when things go wrong. Yes, you do take the flak, but you also get a lot of credit when you take those decisions. And secondly, for many things which many people in your whole organization are doing, also if you do your decision-making in a participative way, it doesn't matter if you take the flak when things go wrong. You do know that the whole organization, your board, and others also thought that it was a good decision. Sure, it didn't work out. So I believe if you're there and comfortable in that process, you would never feel lonely at the top. The other aspect is the distance between the leader and the CEO and the rest of the organization. If you're living in an ivory tower, that would certainly be the case. If you think of your team as your extended family, you involve them, you genuinely care for them, you're building their careers, I think what you will get in turn is tons of goodwill. You get their love and affection, and it lives with you all these years. It leaves you with a warm glow. So it's an opportunity to give, and it's an opportunity to get back. And I look back over the years, there isn't a company of mine where I've not worked in. There may be even companies I worked in 40, 50 years ago in Hyderabad in Shriram Refrigeration, and now all the way through Wipro, Mindtree, Happiest Minds. I keep meeting people who've been working with me as a part of my team, and they come back and tell me, hey, we do remember this particular thing, which we believe we either learned from you or which we participated with you in making it happen. So I could never think of lonely at the top as something I would accept.
Peter, this is another very controversial myth that you busted, which is, which Jack Welch made famous, or rather I would say infamous: fire the bottom 10%. So why don't you tell us a little bit more?
Jack Welch is a very famous business person, and he has proven that he absolutely knows what he's talking about. And in one of his books, one of his discussions, he points out that a certain portion of your organization, your employees, will be your top performers, the ones who go above and beyond the call of duty. And he's put a number on it, around 20%. He then identified that about 70% of your organization, and notice my emphasis on the about, all of these numbers are fuzzy, they have to be. About 70% of your organization will be the ones who are delivering to your requirements. They're doing the job day in and day out. They're reliable, they're the core. And then, he said, there will be somewhere around 10% of the organization who are underperformers. Now, he could have said, fire the underperformers. But that doesn't have punch and hype to it. So he made it simple, and he said, fire the bottom 10%. And some organizations, unfortunately, took that literally and created an edict to their managers that once a year, you need to fire the bottom 10% of your department. Now, that is catastrophically insane. If I have good performers or great performers, I'm not getting rid of 10% of them just because Jack Welch says so. The other consequences, if you create a culture where no matter what you do, if you fall into the bottom 10%, and everybody, there will always be someone in the bottom 10%, no matter how good they are. If you fire good people just because they're hitting this magical number, then you're creating a hostile environment for your people. If he had said, fire the underperformers after you've tried to coach them to be better, it would have been more accurate, but it wouldn't have been as catchy. I have found that notion of firing the bottom 10% to be counter people. It goes against the very heart of who people are. It's brutal. People are not numbers. You need to treat people like people.
Good. I think now we can invite our, Chennai-based panelists to talk about their takeaways from the book. Meera, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So when I first looked at the book, George Bernard Shaw came to mind. He had said, a golden rule is not a golden rule. Golden rule is that there are no golden rules. Okay. So such contradictions exist in different aspects of our life. But what we need to do is what is mentioned in this book. Several people have commented about such contradictions in the past. Okay. For instance, in every truth, the opposite is also true. Ignorance is bliss versus knowledge is power. Okay. There's no such thing as free lunch, contradicting the best things in life are free. Okay. So it's important for all of us to recognize that there are contradictions. We need to acknowledge these contradictions, but we need to explore more about these contradictions and use them in the right context. Okay. So Mr. Soota and other co-authors, Peter and Sandhya, who are there with us today, have actually explored these myths in a very different way. Now, what are myths? For many of you, what are myths? They're actually narratives which are stubborn and which are memorable. They leave an everlasting impact. And how do you bust these myths? You need to come out with another narrative which is even more memorable. So what did the authors do in this book? They actually used logic. They used their real life experiences in the business world, and they explored these myths. In the beginning, they listed a number of myths, which itself is useful and commendable for all of us. Apart from that, they used several examples and made the reader think and arrive at a conclusion. Now, several of these myths listed here resonate very well with me. Now, I'll take one myth and talk from my experience. Okay, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I was a part of the founding team of National Commodities and Derivatives Exchange in 2003. Till 2003, the commodity trading in industry in India was largely unorganized. There were few dominant players, and it was not transparent. So the objective of creating National Commodities and Derivatives Exchange was to offer transparent trading mechanisms for price risk management of agricultural commodities and other commodities. Given this industry context, the organization's objective, management felt that they should create a culture which was open and transparent. And importance was given primarily to integrity, open communication, and education of not only the employees, but also the customers. Given this industry context and the objective and the values that the organization had, several strategies were created. For instance, it was important not only to educate the customers of National Commodities and Derivatives Exchange about the benefits of trading on commodity derivatives, but they also needed to be apprised of the risks that were there in the system. So what is mentioned is they're trying to bust the myth, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So for any organization to be successful, both culture and strategy are equally important. Yeah.
Well said, well said. Ravichandran.
Thank you for having me on this panel. So I will give you a little bit of background. I come from a manufacturing sector, and I've spent quite a bit of time in building businesses, both inside and outside India. And when I got the opportunity to read the book, I couldn't agree more to what was narrated in the book. I will kind of share some of my thoughts, as there's been a lot of talk about fail fast, fail cheap. Let me take that one first. In around 1999, we acquired a startup company, which was actually headquartered in Melbourne, which relocated to Toronto. And this company had oil-free technology. In the air conditioning business, oil-free was something unheard of, because oil is one of the lubricating force in a chiller, actually. And we believe that this is going to be the future of compressor technology. And we picked up the startup on a 50-50 joint venture and took quite a bit of years to commercialize the product. The product took almost 10 years to get out to the market. But as rightly mentioned by Mr. Ashok Soota, I think we had enough cash in the reserves to really fuel the business, because Our founder believed in the technology. Today, when the world is talking about ESG, when the world is talking about circularity, this product is 99% circular, which means 99% of the parts are recyclable actually. So if we simply went by the myth of fail cheap, fail fast, we wouldn't be today leading the market with this technology. I mean, this is one of the examples I wanted to tell you all. But again, it is important. Yeah, it is important for us to recognize that, when you look at these kind of myths, there are probably narratives which are used in certain situations, but they don't really apply to most of the situations. Let me pick the other one. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, actually. It's very often used, largely coming from Ford Motors. When you meet anyone from Ford Motors in the early days, this was kind of a common terminology that they used to spell out when you meet them as well. I think to me, culture is very important for any organization. If I take my organization, there's a 90-year-old family-run business. Culture is, the DNA of the company. It kind of reverberates with the DNA as well as the purpose of why the company was formed. So it's going to be everlasting in the enterprise, what the founders thought about the original vision for the company. That's the real core of the company, and of course, we don't make too many changes to the culture, but we make some adaptations based on how the environment changes. Whereas strategy is very different. Strategy is you adapt, to the external world in terms of how you plan your growth. What is that? Where do you want to play? How do you want to win? So it's a very different dynamics, and you don't too much tinker with the culture, but you kind of tinker with the strategy actually. But you need both to be combined if you want to execute perfectly as well. So therefore, this myth of culture eats strategy for breakfast is probably applicable for Peter Drucker, but not for companies like us, because we haven't really, it's kind of a connotation that has been used very often, more from the American world, but being a European company, we have never used it. So for me, I don't really buy to the argument, because culture and strategy are very important for any enterprise. Because even after 90 years, what was the values and the founder had established, which is kind of the underlying behavior, right? For example, we have 3 behaviors, frontline passion. So the founder said, do what matters most for your customers, right? And every employee should run the business like your own, how you spend your money, how you spend resources. Yeah. Third is think about the company first before you think about the business and yourself, actually. So these are all very simple value systems, which actually is anchored for having the right behavior for the business, actually. So I think these are 2 different things, is my perspective, which I wanted to share with you all.
I think it's really heartening to know, the myths and the way we have brought it out has resonated with you. I'm going to ask the next 2-3 questions to all 4 of you. Okay, and you can choose who wants to go first. Shall we start with Peter? Which of the myths you busted present the most pressing challenge for industry practitioners today?
I'm very biased. My background is change management. And the biggest challenge we're facing is this belief that people resist change. No, they don't. They resist being changed. If you can get your people to desire a change, and there are techniques for doing that, you cannot hold them back. If you believe that people will always resist change, you will not be able to move them forward.
Mr. Soota?
Yeah, is it the same question? Or...
Yeah, it's the same question.
Well, I'll tell you, I think the most important essay here from my angle, and it's partly in this context of the new world that we're in, is Michael Porter's statement of saying that the essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. And Michael Porter's whole reasoning is that there has to be a trade-off. You can't do everything. So if you say yes to something, you must say no to the other. Now, I really don't agree with this at all, because I believe, like a venture capitalist, I would say that if you have a good idea, then you have to find a means of funding it. That's one part of it. Second part, so there don't have to be trade-offs. And the second, and I think the most important part in that, is that the errors of omission are much larger and much more expensive than the errors of commission, because you don't even know what you lost. And a good example of that is when Bill Gates was asked, what is the biggest mistake you made in your life? So he said, I didn't do Android. Here was the guy who owned the operating system world. And he really, at least he realized years later that he missed that opportunity. And the moment you get into that mindset, you don't know what you're going to miss. So I think that's a really critical one. There's another angle to this, which is really relevant in today's day and age more than perhaps when Michael Porter wrote it. We're in an intensely hyper-competitive world. Everybody has got to have a stake in everybody else's place. Otherwise, you don't know where they will come and wipe you out. Another good example from Microsoft and Google. For how many years has Google completely dominated search? Yet Microsoft never let go. They're there, hanging on. And suddenly a new change of technology, generative AI, has made them another major player into the space. So you've got to keep your options open. The third angle, which I think needs to be brought in, is today we are developing our businesses increasingly, which run off platforms. You make money while you sleep, and the platform brings the buyer and the seller together. In that context, you can do much more than you could have thought of doing in the past. So I do believe that that's one particular, let's say, myth from a very, very reputed person, which I believe never was correct. And now it completely does not stand the test of time.
I think I'll move on to the next question. Meera, in today's startup economy, since you're on, a board member and you're a management consultant yourself, I thought you best suited to answer this. What are the red flags for Indian companies while scaling up?
In my view, the founder, the founding team, they are the biggest asset for a startup, and they can also be the biggest liability. And most important factor for the startup while scaling up is the founder and the founding team themselves, their vision, their passion, their mindset, and the capability. In fact, in one of the startups that we had invested in, there were severe differences of opinion between both the co-founders, so much so that the complete enterprise was brought to a standstill. None of the investors could do anything about it. Now, if it's a single founder startup, then we normally, as a business mentor and as an investor, we normally advise the startup founder to look for another founder who has the same vision and alignment, but with complementary skill set. So in my view, the founder and the founding team, their capability, their mindset, it's of primal importance. Second is the financial sustainability of the startup and the funding capabilities of the organization. Third, in my view, is the team retention and team availability, talent retention and talent availability. How much talent is available for the startup in the system, and how can they retain the talent that they have acquired already? In my view, these three are the most important and pressing points. Of course, we can rattle off many, but yeah, due to time constraint, I would put these as 1, 2, and 3.
I think I'm going to ask Peter to respond to her observations, because I knew your brain was ticking as you were listening to her. Can you reference it to the book?
I can't relate it to the book, but the notion of a founder, someone who starts a company, has a particular mindset about delivering something new to the market. And that is where their passion is. They may not have the ability to run a larger company. They're the creative force, the early adopter, the innovator, but they're not the one who can manage the growth of a company. Those are different those are different skill sets. And to expect the original founder to be able to take it all through the entire cycle is asking a tremendous amount. Now, every now and then, along comes a superstar, and we have one as the lead author in this book. Ashok Soota does it all, and I am in awe of the man, and I am delighted to have been a part of this project.
All right. I would like to ask you, you know, when you read this book, did it make you re-examine your beliefs and assumptions? And did it cause you to change any of your beliefs?
Well, you know, when I got a chance to read the book, what resonated me was what actually I felt was that the way the book has been articulating some of these myths with practical, you know, experiences from leaders, you know, it kind of very nicely resonated with me. Why we should not just blindly believe these myths. And you know, for somebody who has been dealing with people as a daily part of my career, quite a lot of stuff, what I've read in the book was spot on, in my view. And it was also easy to follow, you know, that's where I felt I could easily connect the book, and, you know, the 110 odd pages I could actually read in 3 hours.
Oh,
It's not very easy. So, and you know, I was also fascinated by a lot that was mentioned, you know, by Sandeep Maini as well, because he's probably from a manufacturing background, and it very well resonated with us. You know, I just pick one, you know, for example, people leave because of their bosses, you know, that's really not true. Actually, people leave because probably for several other reasons, you know. So these are all things which, you know, it was like a real life experience for me reading the book.
Okay, so I think now we can move on to the rapid fire round. I know originally I'd said I would only ask Mr. Soota and Peter, but I think I'm going to make it a little more challenging and throw some questions to both of you. Are you game?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Peter, sum up management in a nutshell.
Managers maintain the status quo, leaders change the status quo. And as Ashok has said repeatedly, you can't do just one. You have to have some skills in both areas. Otherwise, you're handicapped. This is the short thing.
Yeah. I have a problem with Peter. He does not know how to answer anything in one sentence. You know? All right. Mr. Soota, which of the 17 myths in the book annoys you the most?
I've actually covered them, but let me take a new one since it hasn't come up. Now, that's just a prelude. And the one is about hiring people smarter than yourself. And the reason is it's too simplistic. It doesn't take into account things like multiple intelligences. And you're not, and the last time this happened to anybody is when Steve Jobs hired Peter Scully and lost his job.
Yeah, we can't have that, can we? Okay. I can ask you this, sum up the difference between leadership and management.
I think leadership is setting the direction for the company and making people believe in what the purpose of the company and is to really articulate that to the organization. So that really is the role of leadership. I think managing is more, you know, empowering, you know, empowering and providing them enough capital and giving them the opportunity to, you know, realize their full potential. That is for me management. But in all of whether you want to be a good leader or whether you want to be a good manager, I think curiosity is a very important piece. Curiosity, purpose, and empathy and humility, you know, these are very important characters for being both a good manager and a good leader, actually. So I think it's two sides of the same coin, in my view. But again, you need to build strong teams to really make this happen
Right.
and really empower them actually. So
Thank you. You were a management consultant yourself. So which do you think is the most common management issue that you've come across?
One is people leave people, but not organizations.
Okay.
Okay. So I can quote from my own example. I mean, an example that I've experienced I was associated with a large conservative business group in India. And I was the executive coach for a senior woman leader. She had joined the organization. She was 3 years into the organization. And she was reporting directly to the CEO. The CEO had just changed. The earlier CEO had retired. A new CEO had taken over. And the new CEO was slightly autocratic. He would humiliate her, be judgmental, be critical, and would make fun of her in public. And she was quite annoyed by the whole situation. She wanted to leave the organization. She was actually contemplating on leaving the organization. But 2 years into the organization, she actually discovered, that is during the executive coaching, she told me, that 2 years into the organization, she discovered that though she was very well qualified and experienced, she was taken at a lower pay scale as compared to her peers. Okay. And she was also denied a promotion. So though the company and the group bragged about diversity, inclusion, and equality, in reality, they were not practicing it. They were not used to having senior women leaders in both their group and the organization. So when she was contemplating leaving, now what should we blame? Should we blame leadership or should we blame the group and their culture? That's a good thought.
Okay.
So it's important that organizations don't take the easy path and blame leaders, but they look, introspect, and understand what are the underlying reasons that create such leaders.
All right. So they should attend Peter's management workshop, I think.
Yeah.
In fact, Peter, coming to that topic, you've been conducting workshops in India. You've done on change management, and you are doing a new one created based on this book. So do you customize your workshops according to the country and culture?
The short answer, I guess, is yes. But the way I do it is different than what most people expect. I don't worry about the culture and I don't worry about the company. When I start giving a course, the only thing that's important to me is how do I meet the needs of the people in the room at the time? Everything else is secondary. And the way I find that out is I do something very, very radical. I ask each individual in the room, what do you want from the course today? I cheat. If I ask you what you want, and then I give you what you want, at the end of the day, you leave and you go, I got exactly what I wanted. And that's almost cheating. I could talk all day, as you well know, but if I'm not meeting your personal needs, I'm not serving you as an attendee in the room. So that's how I do, that's how I answer what you asked. I speak to the individual.
Okay. Mr. Soota, do you have any other remarks to make before we move to the Q&A?
Well, let me take one of the myths which hasn't come up at all, and that is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, if you look at today's world, the world is changing so rapidly. If you wait for things to go wrong before you begin to fix things, then you're going to be swept out of business very soon. You have to be proactive. You've got to go and break it if required. You've got to anticipate where things are going to change and lead the company in that direction rather than waiting for saying, hey, everything is going well, so let's coast along and go along. And I think that's another important thing about not just letting things remain in a status quo and questioning the status quo.
Wonderful.
Just wanted to add one point here, I went to a company and asked them, how often do you redesign your platform? It was a car company, and they said we do it in about once in 10 years. I went to another company and asked them how often do you redesign the platform? They said they do it in 2 years. So I think you can see that the world is changing so fast, and no wonder the company which was redesigning platform every 2 years was having a market share of 60%. And the company which was redesigning a platform every 10 years was having a market share of 2%.
Yeah, which is what I noticed in,
Yeah.
in this rush to build EV vehicles. The legacy players are the ones lagging behind because it's going to take them that much longer to build rebuild what they already have. Whereas for new players, it's much easier.
I just wanted to connect with this famous saying of companies have to decide what not to do.
Yes.
But here is an example. Companies have decided to do where to play, how to win.
That's good.
Sure.
So shall I move on to the questions now? We seem to have quite a lot of questions coming in from people online also, which have been faithfully noted down and given to me. So let's start with Matthew, who's asked this question from Mysore. What inspired the three of you to write this book, and what motivated you to debunk management myths specifically? I think Mr. Soota should start the answer.
Yeah, well, I did explain this in a way in the very beginning in my opening remarks, because there were certain things which to my mind were actually dangerous if you accepted them at face value, because they could lead you into erroneous decision making. You could get complacent in the process of saying, hey, if it ain't broke, for example, don't fix it. No, you do need to be proactive and make that change. And therefore, there were a lot of things which caused me a lot of angst. We've discussed culture eats strategy for breakfast. I believe in the complete importance of culture. There's no question. I would imagine, take a lot of pride in the culture I've created in all the organizations, or we've created in our organizations. And yet I would never say to eat strategy for breakfast. So I really had to get that point of view across. And that is how I particularly selected the myths that I chose, and the ones which Peter chose too later on resonated with me. So I think that's really the fundamental process, but both you and Peter may want to add something to the question, since it's really addressed to all of us.
Peter?
I'll make it short to make up for the earlier long thing during the short session. I chose the things that irritated me most in business beliefs, which I had something that I thought would be useful to say. And that's how the primary selection began. And then what we did, as Ashok had just said, we tried to find the overlap, the ones that irritated both of us, that we had something to say. And those are the ones we went after first.
Actually, as Ravichandran kindly pointed out, the answer to this question is actually there in the first page of the book. So you could read that, Matthew, if you're, watching this. But if you ask me, I didn't choose the topic. The book was halfway complete when I was co-opted as also an author. So I just went along, did my job and completed it. But along the way, I did have some amount of contribution, especially I think in the last 3 or 4 myths that were chosen. I had my say about which seemed more interesting than the others. The next one, I think some of this question, I mean, it's a 2-part question. Some of it has already been answered. What role does leadership play in the process of debunking management myths, and how can leaders encourage their teams to question established practices? I think we can answer the second part. How to develop this culture of questioning established practices within the organization? Mr. Soota?
Well, I think the first thing is to be clear that there has to be an open environment. There has to be an environment which encourages such questions. And certainly there's to be no fear. I think in all of the companies that I've run, we have really regular communication sessions. And the one thing we keep emphasizing to everybody, that there are no holds barred. You can ask any question you want and we will answer it. And certainly you can ask the most awkward questions from which you feel management may actually find difficult to answer. and they will get answered. And once you establish that rhythm and that belief, and everybody realizes that anybody who asks that so-called difficult question is not going to get punished, but maybe rewarded for it, it completely ensures that you won't have that sort of a problem.
Yeah.
No, I think that one of the important qualities of leadership is to also make sure you build an organization where there's a lot of psychological safety for speaking up. Because, you know, this really, and when I look at organizations today, we have multi-generational set of people working, especially in an Indian context. You have a Gen X who have to collaborate with Gen Z. So providing that psychological safety is very important. And this is one of the important leadership requirements as well, in my view.
Good. Moving on to the next one about management practices can vary significantly across industries and cultures. How do you account for this diversity while offering universal principles for debunking management myths? Peter?
I didn't quite get it. Could you repeat
Okay,
it? Sorry.
management practices can vary significantly across industries and cultures. How do you account for this diversity while offering universal principles for debunking management myths?
One of the realities is that companies are different. They're also unique. So the fact that a bit of wisdom is so diverse that it changes from one to the other should not come as a surprise, but it also should be a lesson. If you're hearing 7 or 10 or 15 different variations of the same bit of wisdom, it tells you that perhaps there is no single one that's correct. And this ties into a chapter that we did on best practices. Best practices sound so attractive, but the reality is that there is no one single practice that every organization can use. That's almost insane. Every snowflake is different, as should be every best practice. It will change from one organization to the next, and that should not come as a surprise.
Sam from Pune, I hope that answered your question. Now, moving on to this is from Rajesh from Salem. He asked, could you share some examples of common management myths that you face and why they're problematic in today's business world? You know what? I'll just make this easy. I'm just going to list the 17 myths that have been addressed. And this is it. Yeah, a culture eats strategy for breakfast. The essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. It's lonely at the top. Fail.
Hey,
fast.
Sandhya, I think you could hold on because that's what we've been talking about. Please don't read out the list of.
So I'm giving him the
And
contents
please
of-
do ask the person who's asked this to get a copy of the book.
Yeah, Rajesh, you can buy the book. So that was just a little teaser of what is there in the book. 17 essays which talk about these myths. And next one. Okay. Did you come across any management myths that surprised you or challenged your own preconceptions? Santosh from Chennai.
One of the most interesting ones in the book for me was the people don't leave organizations, they leave people. Now, I understand that what we wrote is correct. People leave organizations for all types of reasons. I've worked for 8 different organizations in my life. I've left for 8 different reasons. But the one that sticks out in my mind, because it was so emotional, was the time I quit a manager. And I quit them within 3 days of an event that annoyed me. And it has such an emotional impact that even after we'd finished the chapter, and intellectually I know that it's not true, there's a little voice in my head that goes, you left an organization because you didn't like an individual. I did, but I also left for 7 other reasons. Those ones fade into the background, and our personal experience dominates our thinking. And that is one of the things that I hope the book tries to remind us. Don't let your personal, single, unique experience color your entire decision-making process. Open your mind, bring in the rational side of your process, and pay attention.
Wonderful. This is from Kirti from Sri City. Is that Sri City? Okay. What are some practical steps that readers can take to start debunking management myths within their organizations?
Well, firstly, everybody's got to know what are the myths which are really influencing thought. And to that extent, this has to be a very contextual type of answer, because if you, for example, felt that there's a feeling within an organization that, look, because of XYZ manager, we're getting our attrition, I think then that needs to be addressed. Or people say, hey, there's something wrong with the organization when all of the parameters under which you're measured, whether it's a Glassdoor rating or a Great Places to Work rating, are outstanding. It is at that stage that you need to debunk that particular myth and bring this to attention and address it very, very openly and tell people, look, these are some of the issues which may be in your mind, but hey, look, this is the right perspective that you need. So the answer to really all of these is going to be dialogue. It may even be on culture. Even the best cultures may occasionally become toxic. And then when that happens, you need to get to the root cause, discuss all the issues concerned, make it as open as you can, and then go about solving the issue.
Okay, I'm just going to read out the next couple of questions because they have sent it in. The business world is constantly evolving. How do you suggest staying updated on the latest management trends and best practices while also critically evaluating their validity? This is from Shalini Trichy. Shalini, I would tell you what I'm going to tell the next person, Kandan from Coimbatore, who sent a question also. That is, you have to read this book. It's not a very expensive book. I'm sure your college library or, and this is how you keep yourself updated with the latest in management. And Kandan has asked, experience is a valuable teacher, but it can also lead to entrenched thinking. How do you suggest balancing the wisdom gained from experience with the need for innovation and adaptability in management? This is a guidebook for people who have such queries. I'm really very happy that I'm getting such good questions. And I think Mr. Soota and Peter would both be delighted that their book answers these questions. I think so. So Shalini.
I think, if I may say so, Sandhya, I think that last question really does deserve a more specific reply than saying just go back and read the book. And I think a good person who may be able to respond to that is Meera.
Meera, which is the one about experience or the
Yeah, experience, and it can lead to entrenched thinking. So what do you do as a consultant?
Experience is a valuable teacher, but it can also lead to entrenched thinking. How do you suggest balancing the wisdom gained from experience with the need for innovation and adaptability in management? You should constantly be updating your knowledge, your skill set, dealing with people, understanding what is happening out there so that you don't feel that you're truly old and experienced. You have to interact with youngsters, understand, and you have to be there. It's just not enough to say that you're an experienced professional. You need to constantly deal with people and understand what happens.
So experience is the best teacher as long as you keep an open mind and want to learn.
I need to add something desperately. One of the most underutilized resources that we have as business people are the business associations that exist in the world. If you want to know what is happening in your industry, join an industry association, volunteer, become a part of it, be integral to it. You will meet, you will network, you will gain from the experience of others, you will learn from the failures of others, and the success of others will inspire you. Join your associations. It is cheap and it is powerful. My career started by being part of associations.
I want to add one thing. Learning should be constant at whatever age you are. You need to upgrade your skill sets constantly, whether you take a degree or you do a diploma, whether you do a course from course era or understand more about sustainability. You need to keep updating and upgrading your skill set for your mind to be innovative.
Good. Ravi, you want to
No, I think in simple terms, we are living in a world which is changing very fast. So what I recommend to a lot of young people is be real, get help, get connected.
Absolutely. I think, Ravi, it also holds good for people at any stage and age. Very well said. So there's a question from Vishwanathan. What is your view on the saying, disrupt before you get disrupted?
Yeah, well, that is the essence of if it ain't broke, don't fix it for one, because you really have to move forward. And you also got to be very clear in today's world, how many businesses do you see where people didn't realize the need to move on and the incumbent lost out? And that's been there for a while. I mean, let's look at it like this. The leaders in mainframe didn't become the leaders in mini computers, and the leaders in mini computers didn't become the leaders in personal computers, and then you could go on. All of their businesses got disrupted because they didn't see the change coming. And the only thing is that now the change is coming from so many sides, from so many new technologies, new business models are evolving. The internet is creating new business models. And if you don't start disrupting, for sure you're going to get disrupted.
Good. Anybody wants to add?
I think there's another myth called what gets measured is what gets done.
Ah.
And this is kind of symbiotic to this question as well.
Right. Any other questions from the audience? Avis, Mani?
I have a question for you, Sandhya. Was it daunting to join the team as a third person with two really overarching, powerful egoists, powerful, experienced people already there as authors?
Well, I didn't know Peter at all, so I didn't know he was egoistic or powerful.
No, I didn't say egoistic. I meant, experienced.
I knew Mr. Soota, and he's not egoistic at all. Yes, he has a very strong mind, and at times we used to butt horns. And then the thing was, since he's very busy and he would take long breaks, we had time to cool down before we met again. So it never was a problem. But also, it was hugely enriching for me it was like my personal hotline to top-notch industry leader. I really enjoyed it. And I wish I had read this book 20 years ago. It would have changed a lot for me. And Peter was a dream actually to work with. I had my doubts and I said, I'm going to change some things. I want to change some things in what he said, and I want him to change the examples he's given. I wanted to make it more relevant to younger people.
Yeah.
I was hesitant when Mr. Soota said, you did so many things in this book already. How will you know unless you do it? You do it and send it to him and let's see. He was a team player out and out. He did everything that I wanted him to do, and it was brilliant. I never thought it would be so smooth, actually.
Can I add something to that? Because there's a philosophy that I operate with that relates to the collaboration that we had. When you bring on an expert in your team, treat them as an expert. If they're an expert, listen to them. If I'm going to second guess them all the time, then I'm not using what we brought them on for. So if you get an expert, use them for the reason that you got them. If you don't do that, you're going to destroy the whole purpose of bringing them on board. It's absolutely crucial. Exploit your experts. If she tells me to jump how high, I'll jump. And then I'll ask her, can I come down now?
Okay, I'm not a sadist, but yes, you did your bit to make my life smooth. Thank you very much. on that note, I think, thank you all for being a very receptive audience.
Thank you so much. I think the attraction, more than 880 viewers are watching it online. And in fact, we screened the question. We sent only about 40-50% to you. Balance is still lying with us. Yes. And thank you so much. Thanks. I think big round of applause to distinguished panelists for sharing some brilliant views. Mr. Soota, we are really missing you. Maybe next time we visit Chennai, we would like to host you. But still, we want to give you a digital memento, what we made especially for you. Can I have a digital memento for Mr. Soota? Thank you so much for joining us online. Maybe big round of applause to Mr. Soota for sharing his wisdom. I'm quite sure when you walk out of this hall, you're all more wiser and more knowledgeable now. Now, may I request past president of MMA and step forward. Goes on pressing the memento to our distinguished guest this evening. Sandhya and Peter, can you please step forward? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for
So
joining us
buy
this
the
evening.
book, read it. It's
Yes.
interesting. And for all the young
Yeah.
students out there, young professionals out there, it's a must read.
Yeah, the book is available. And after some time, there'll be a couple of books available in our library too. You can read them and you can buy the book. And the authors are really happy to autograph and present it to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
and
you.
till we meet again. Bye-bye, Gun. Thank you, Mr. Soota.
Hello, thank you, everybody.
Pleasure having you.
Bye-bye.
Yes, look forward to visiting you soon in Chennai at MMA. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.